The sun hung low over the burning plains of Arizona, a molten coin sinking slowly behind red hills that shimmered with heat. The land was vast and cruel. Every breeze carried dust, every shadow whispered danger. Jake Holloway knew both well. He was a man of few words, a rancher hardened by years of drought, solitude, and the uneasy peace that hung between settlers and the Apache tribes beyond the ridges. His ranch stood alone, miles of open land. A small corral, a broken windmill that moaned in the wind, and one tired horse named Dusty. Jake's only companions were silence and memory, and lately even silence had begun to sound like loneliness. That evening, as Jake worked by the trough mending the cracked pump handle, he saw movement far across the barren stretch, a figure stumbling through the heat haze. He squinted, hand raised against the glare. The shape was tall, impossibly tall but slender, staggering like someone lost between life and death. At first he thought it was a mirage, heat playing tricks, but then he saw her fall. Jake cursed under his breath, grabbed his canteen and mounted Dusty, spurring across the open plain. When he reached her, the sight froze him solid. She wasn't just tall. She was giant, a young Apache girl, her height nearly twice his own, skin sunburned and lips cracked, lying half-conscious in the dust. Her eyes flickered open as he knelt beside her, dark, fierce eyes that seemed to hold the entire desert in them. She tried to speak, but her voice came out a rasp. "Water." That single word broke the spell. Jake uncorked his canteen and pressed it to her lips. She drank greedily, then slowed, gazing at him in disbelief, as if no white man had ever shown her kindness before. Her size, her presence, it was something unnatural, something ancient, but Jake didn't care. He was a man and she was dying of thirst. That was all that mattered. As she regained strength, she sat up, towering over him even when seated. Her long black hair shimmered with dust and sunlight, and around her neck hung a pendant carved from bone. She looked at him with caution, but also respect. "You should not have helped me," she said, her English broken but clear. "My people will not forgive you," Jake frowned. "Forgive me for what? Giving you water?" She shook her head slowly, her gaze drifting toward the horizon. "You will see." By nightfall she was gone, disappeared without a sound. Jake searched, calling into the desert, but only the coyotes answered. The next morning the world was silent. The wind stopped, even the cattle seemed uneasy. Then Dusty whinnied, a warning. Jake stepped onto the porch and froze. On every ridge, in every shadow, the land moved. Apache warriors, hundreds of them, circling the ranch like wolves closing in. 300 warriors painted for war, feathers and spears glinting under the morning sun. At their head rode an older chief with eyes like obsidian and a headdress that reached his waist. Jake's heart thudded. He had no chance. He could reach for his rifle, but what would it matter? 300 against one. Dust swirled as they advanced. Jake stood his ground, fear burning in his gut, but pride keeping his boots planted. The chief raised his hand, and the horde stopped. Then the girl appeared. She stepped forward from between the warriors, now dressed in ceremonial skins and beads, her height even more imposing in daylight. The warriors lowered their weapons in reverence as she approached. She was no ordinary girl. She was Tocha, daughter of the chief believed by her people to be born of the mountain spirits, a protector destined to bring balance between the Apaches and the white men. Jake's act of mercy had not gone unnoticed. It had shaken the balance. The chief dismounted and walked up to Jake, studying him as one might study a strange animal. "You gave water to my daughter," he said in deep, accented English. "You saved her life." Jake swallowed hard. "I didn't know who she was. I just did what anyone should do." The chief's eyes narrowed. "Not any white man," he said. He turned to his warriors and shouted something in Apache. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Some looked furious, others confused. Jake didn't understand the words, but he understood the tone. This was no simple visit. Tocha stepped forward. "Father," she said firmly, "he did not harm me. He showed mercy." The chief's gaze softened only slightly. "Mercy is rare in the land of our enemies," he said. "We came here to see if it was true. A white man who remembers the law of the desert that water belongs to all." He turned back to Jake. "You are either the bravest fool I have met, or the only honest man left west of the Rio. Grande." Jake tried to speak, but before he could, one of the younger warriors shouted angrily, pointing at him. "He is still one of them." The chief silenced him with a gesture. Yes, he said quietly. He is one of them. But perhaps... His gaze lingered on Jake. Not all of them are lost. For hours they spoke, Jake explaining his life, his solitude, the harshness of the land. The chief spoke of raids, betrayal, and vengeance. Toka stood between them, translating when words faltered. And slowly something changed. The circle of warriors relaxed. Spears lowered. The dust settled. By sundown, the chief made his decision. He raised his hands and said something to his people. The warriors began to chant, their voices echoing through the canyon. Tocha smiled, and for the first time Jake saw warmth in her eyes. You are safe, she said softly. My father has declared your land sacred. No Apache will harm you. Jake exhaled, his knees weak with relief. Why? He asked. Toka stepped closer. Because kindness given in the desert is a promise to the spirits, she said, and promises bind us stronger than blood. The warriors turned and rode off one by one, fading into the crimson light. Only Tocha lingered, standing at the edge of his fence. You should know, she said, the land remembers mercy. Someday when the rivers dry and men forget their hearts, this story will be told again. Jake watched her disappear into the horizon, her silhouette merging with the mountains that seemed almost to bow before her. That night Jake sat by his fire, unable to sleep. The wind carried distant drums, soft and rhythmic, not of war but of gratitude. He looked at the stars and felt something he hadn't in years: hope. He realized that sometimes the smallest act, offering water to a stranger, could ripple through the world like thunder through the canyons. From that day forward, no Apache ever touched Jake's ranch. His cattle grazed free, his wells never ran dry, and travelers passing through the desert told of a strange peace that hovered around Holloway's land. Years later, people would call it the miracle of the giant girl, and some would swear they saw her still, tall as a cedar, walking through the red dusk, watching over the ranch that kindness built. So if you ever cross those red hills at sunset and feel the wind turn warm for no reason, remember Jake Holloway, the man who gave water when others would have turned away, and changed the fate of 100 souls. And if this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel, because there are more forgotten tales like this one. Stories of courage, compassion, and the strange magic that lives in the human spirit. Don't miss what's coming next. Hit that bell, share the story, and keep the fire of kindness alive.